Hey there, deep divers.
Well,
Back again for another deep dive, and you know me, right? I'm all about those good vibes.
always bring in the energy.
But you know what? If I told you that sometimes all that positivity, can actually backfire.
Oh, I like where this is going.
Yeah, so that's what we're looking at today, this whole idea of toxic positivity, where you kind of got to force a smile even when things aren't so great.
Right, you just slap on a happy face and pretend everything is awesome.
Exactly. And we've got some really interesting research here that dives into why that can actually be pretty harmful.
It's wild, right? Like, on the one hand, optimism can be so powerful, but when it's used to, like, shove down or totally ignore real emotions,
Ooh, that's deep.
yeah, like sadness, grief, frustration, all the stuff that makes us human.
So it's not just about, like slapping on that fake smile and pretending everything is peachy.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It's deeper than that. Think
Yeah.
about it. When you tell someone just be positive when they're going through something really tough, you're basically telling them that their feelings are wrong.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that can be so invalidating. You wouldn't tell someone with like a broken leg to just walk it off, right?
Definitely not. That would be terrible advice.
Exactly. It's the same with our emotions. We have to acknowledge the hurt, the emotional scrapes and bruises so we can actually heal.
Okay, yeah. I'm starting to see what you mean, but why is it so bad to try and stay positive all the time?
Well, imagine a pressure cooker. You keep adding heat, but you
Yeah.
never release any of the steam. What happens?
Oh boy, I think I know where this is going.
Kaboom, right? It explodes.
Hmm.
Our emotions are kind of similar. Bottling them up in the name of staying positive is like keeping that pressure cooker on full blast.
So it might look okay on the surface, but underneath?
Exactly. All that suppressed emotion is building up, and eventually it can lead to anxiety, depression, you name it.
So those negative emotions, they're not something we should just ignore or try to wish away.
Not at all. It's not about wallowing in negativity, but it is about allowing ourselves to feel the full range of human emotions.
It's like accepting that life is a mix of all those things.
Exactly. The good, the bad, the happy, the sad, all of it's part of the experience.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like trying to force a puzzle piece into the wrong spot. It just doesn't fit.
That's a great way to put it. The more we force it, the more frustrated we get, the more
Yes.
damage we do. Instead, we got to learn to recognize each piece for what it is and find where it truly belongs.
So how do we do that? How do we move away from this toxic positivity and find a healthier way to deal with our emotions?
That's the million-dollar question. And it's something we're going to explore as we go deeper into this. But the good news is there are ways to cultivate a more balanced approach, one that lets us experience all of life without falling into that toxic positivity trap.
Okay, now I'm really interested. What's the first step towards building this more balanced approach?
One of the biggest things is shifting how we think about struggle. Our research actually suggests that those moments of failure, conflict, disappointment, they can actually be really valuable opportunities for growth.
Wait, really? I think most people would rather just avoid struggling altogether.
Of course, who wants to struggle? But think of it this way. Those challenges, those tough times, they're like boot camp for our emotional resilience.
Okay, I kind of like that analogy. So instead of seeing struggles as something negative, something to avoid, we should see them as chances to learn and grow.
Exactly. It's by facing those challenges head on that we build the strength and resilience we need to navigate the ups and downs of life.
So it's not about pretending those struggles don't exist or trying to force ourselves to be happy all the time. It's about acknowledging those difficult moments and using them as stepping stones to become stronger and more resilient.
You got it. And there's actually a quote from our research that sums this up perfectly. It says, struggles such as failure, conflict, and disappointment are opportunities to learn resilience, adapt, and grow.
Ooh, I love that quote.
Right.
It reminds me of the saying, smooth seas never made a skilled sailor. We need those waves, those storms to really learn and hone our skills.
Exactly. And speaking of skills, let's bring this back to you. Have you ever faced a challenge that, looking back, you can see helped you grow?
Oh, absolutely. I remember when,
It's amazing how those challenges, the ones we try so hard to avoid, can actually shape us into the people we are today.
yeah, it's like those moments, even though they might not always be pretty or maybe even a little embarrassing looking back, they become part of our story. Like they toughened us up.
Right, and that toughness, that resilience, it doesn't come from just trying to bypass those difficult situations with, fake positivity. It comes from facing those challenges head on, learning from them, and coming out the other side stronger.
It's like we're so focused on getting to that final destination, happiness, success, whatever it is, that we forget to actually appreciate the journey and all the lessons we learn along the way.
You hit the nail on the head. And speaking of destinations, this whole constant pursuit of happiness can actually lead us straight into another trap, the perfectionism trap.
Perfectionism. Yeah, we've all been there, right? That desire to have it all together, to always be happy, successful.
It's a natural desire, absolutely. But the problem is, this pressure to be perfect creates these unrealistic expectations. And when those expectations inevitably aren't met, because, let's face it, life is messy, it can leave us feeling inadequate and disappointed.
It's like when you're scrolling through social media and everyone seems to be living these picture-perfect lives and you're over here struggling to keep your houseplants alive.
Exactly. You start comparing yourself and feeling like you don't measure up, and that's where the danger lies. This cycle of striving for perfection and then feeling crushed when we stumble can really take a toll.
So listeners, take a moment and think about this. Have you ever felt this pressure to be perfect? To be happy all the time? Maybe at work in a relationship, or just that voice in your head telling you you're not good enough? Recognizing those patterns is the first step to breaking free.
And that recognition leads us to another important point, the danger of oversimplification. You know those phrases we hear all the time, like, everything happens for a reason, or good things come to those who wait.
Oh yeah, those are classics. But it sounds like our research is saying they might not always be so helpful.
Right. While they're often meant to be comforting, they can sometimes oversimplify really complex situations. They can dismiss real pain and suffering and even place blame on individuals for things that are totally out of their control.
It's like telling someone who just lost their job because of a pandemic, well, maybe it was meant to be like, hello, have you seen what groceries cost?
Exactly. It completely ignores the very real struggles people are facing. It's so important to remember that not everything happens for a reason. Sometimes bad things just happen, and attributing everything to fate or some grand plan can actually prevent us from acknowledging the systemic issues that contribute to people's struggles, things like economic inequality, discrimination, or just plain bad luck.
Yeah, it's like putting all the responsibility on the individual. Like if something bad happens, it must be because you weren't positive enough.
That's such an important point. It's so crucial to recognize the interplay between personal responsibility and those bigger systemic factors when we're trying to understand why things happen.
This brings up such an important question for our listeners. How do we balance personal responsibility with recognizing the impact of systems and structures that are often beyond our individual control? It's definitely something to think about. But hey, I think we've delved into the heavy stuff enough for one episode. I'm ready for some solutions. Our research offers some great guidance on developing a more balanced approach to life, one that acknowledges the full spectrum of human experience.
Absolutely. Let's give our listeners some practical tools to cultivate a healthier, more realistic outlook on life.
I'm all ears. What does a more balanced approach actually look like?
Well, the first step, and this is a big one, is learning to embrace all of our emotions. Instead of forcing ourselves to be positive all the time, we need to acknowledge that every emotion, even the negative ones, is valid and part of the human experience.
So it's not about pretending everything is okay when it's not, but rather acknowledging those feelings of sadness, anger, frustration, whatever it is, and allowing ourselves to feel them without judgment.
Precisely. It's about creating space for those emotions to exist without pushing them away or pretending they're not there.
Okay, that makes sense. But if we're not supposed to just think positive, what's the alternative? How do we deal with those negative emotions in a healthy way?
Our research suggests a few key strategies. First, we need to reframe how we think about success. Instead of seeing it as this fixed destination, we need to see it as a journey, a process of continuous growth and learning.
So it's not about reaching some finish line, but about embracing the journey itself with all its ups and downs.
Exactly. And when we shift our focus that way, we're less likely to get thrown off course by setbacks or disappointments.
Yeah.
We can start to see those challenges as opportunities for growth and learning instead of failures.
I love that. It takes the pressure off to be perfect and allows us to approach life with a more curious and open mind.
Exactly. And that leads to another important strategy, seeking support and connection. We're not meant to go through life alone, and it's okay to ask for help when we need it.
Absolutely. Whether it's talking to a therapist, confiding in a friend, or joining a support group connecting with others can provide that emotional support and guidance to get through tough times. Sometimes just knowing we're not alone in our struggles can make all the difference.
Couldn't agree more. And finally, our research points to cultivating a mindset of realistic optimism.
Realistic optimism. That
Yeah.
sounds interesting. What does that mean exactly?
It means acknowledging the challenges we face while also maintaining a belief in our ability to overcome them. So it's being hopeful but grounded in reality. So instead of saying everything will be fine, we might say this is tough, but I have the resources and support to get through it.
That's a much more empowering and realistic perspective. It acknowledges the difficulty of the situation, but also offers a sense of hope and agency.
It really is about finding that balance, you know,
Right.
not being overly optimistic, but also not getting bogged down in negativity. And the cool thing is it's something we can actually work on. Like mindfulness and acceptance can be really helpful tools.
So mindfulness is about being aware of how we're feeling in the moment, right? Without judging those feelings.
Right. And acceptance means we're not trying to force those feelings to change,
Right.
even the uncomfortable ones.
Okay, I get it. And when we can approach life with that kind of curiosity and acceptance, it's like it opens us up to a much richer
It
experience.
really does. And it's a more authentic experience, too.
It's like embracing all the colors,
Yeah.
instead of trying to paint our lives with just one shade.
I love that analogy. It's about recognizing that all those colors, even the darker ones, they all contribute to the beauty of the overall picture.
So, deep divers, if you're feeling inspired to step out of that toxic positivity trap and embrace a more balanced approach, I have a little challenge for you.
Oh, a challenge. I'm intrigued.
I want you to think about one small step you can take today to acknowledge and validate your emotions in a healthy way. Maybe it's journaling, talking to a friend, or just allowing yourself to feel whatever comes up without judgment.
That's a great challenge.
Yeah.
And to build on that, I'd like to leave our listeners with this final thought. Think back on your own life. What's one challenge you faced that looking back you can see actually led to positive growth? I'd love to hear your stories.
Such a great question. And remember, deep divers, it's not about erasing the negative or pretending life is always perfect. It's about embracing the full experience, the good, the bad, the messy, the beautiful. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the complexities of positivity. We'll catch you